All right. Are you ready to dive into a new culture with me today?
Always. What do we have lined up?
Well, today we're looking at the Awlad Ali Bedouin people of Egypt, specifically how they're holding on to their identity when their world is changing so rapidly.
Yeah, from what I've read, that's a really interesting dynamic, especially because they're known for their nomadic roots, and now they're having to adapt to a more, settled life.
Exactly. And to really understand this, we're going to be jumping into Lila Abu-Lughod's Veiled Sentiments.
Great book. It's amazing how she captures the emotions tied up in this shift, right? It's like their whole world is being redefined.
It is. One of the things that really stood out to me reading it was this sense of nostalgia for their old way of life.
Oh, totally. Abu-Lughod talks about how they speak of the desert with such reverence. It's more than just missing a place, like way more than that. Right. It's an entire way of life, the freedom, the connection to the land. And now that's fading.
It's like a part of them is disappearing. No wonder they look for ways to hold on to it.
They do. Listening to traditional music, incorporating elements of the nomadic past into their new lives. But it's a constant balancing act.
Yeah.
The old ways and the new realities.
It's got to be a struggle. And I wonder how that impacts how they see themselves in the world.
It's key to understanding them. You see, a huge part of how the Awlad Ali define themselves is by looking at who they aren't.
So understanding who they are not helps us to understand who they are.
Yeah. Egyptians, Europeans, people living more settled lives, they use these groups to sort of draw a line in the sand about their own values.
Interesting. Okay, so where do we see that play out?
Everywhere. Hospitality, for example.
Okay, tell me more about that.
The Awlad Ali. Incredibly generous. Like, they see it as a sacred duty, offering the best they have to guests, even if it means sacrifice. But they often see Egyptians as less welcoming.
Because they're not invited into Egyptian homes as often.
Yeah. They might interpret it as a lack of warmth, a lack of respect, even.
Wow, even hospitality becomes a point of comparison.
Right. Us versus them. And it goes beyond that. They value courage. They're used to that harsh desert life. So sometimes they see people in settled communities as maybe lacking that same toughness.
It's like they define themselves by these little differences.
Exactly. And then you layer on top of that their emphasis on family and kinship, and it adds a whole other dimension.
Oh, absolutely. I read that family is everything to the Awlad Ali. What makes it so unique, though?
It's all-encompassing. It's not just who you're related to, it's this sense of responsibility. Like their father's families. That's huge GE. It affects inheritance, marriage, social standing, how they deal with their emotions.
So this network of relationships dictates their lives.
You've got it. A system of loyalty. There's a story in the book, a man gets detained by authorities, and immediately people start showing up at his family's home.
To offer support.
Absolutely. But it's more than that. Even distant cousins show up. To show solidarity, offer help, it's expected.
They really take care of their own.
And it goes beyond blood relatives, too. They have clients, families who've served theirs for generations. They're almost absorbed into the family, addressed with kinship terms.
Once you're in, you're in.
For life. And this whole idea of family, it's tied into their concept of honor, or sharaf, as they call it.
Oh, yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. It's a big part of their culture, from what I understand.
Huge and complex.
So tell me, what does sharaf mean to the Awlad Ali?
Basically, it's about generosity, honesty. But more than anything, it's about independence. Being true to your word, standing on your own 2 feet.
It sounds like it's about individual strength, but also understanding your place in the community.
You got it. Sharaf is about the individual. But there's another important concept, agal, which is more about social wisdom, knowing your place, basically.
So sharaf is like the base, and agal is how you apply it in social situations.
Perfect analogy. It's about knowing when to speak, when to stay silent, understanding those unspoken rules.
It's tricky, right? Balancing staying true to yourself with your community's expectations.
And it gets especially tricky when you talk about emotions, for men particularly.
Oh, really? Tell me more about that.
Well, the Awlad Ali believed that a man who's too emotional, too easily swayed by his feelings, he lacks allow.
So being vulnerable is a weakness.
Maybe not a weakness, but definitely a sign of immaturity, like a lack of self-mastery. And that can really hurt a man's reputation.
Does Abu-Lughod give any examples of this in her book?
She does. There's a really interesting story about a man named Rashid. His wife runs away. And you'd think his family would be sympathetic, right?
Of course, that's a tough situation.
But they're not. They criticize him for wanting her back.
Seriously, why?
They see it as weak, like he's desperate. His own cousin even tells him, Don't ever get upset over a woman. Thank God we have men and money. There are lots of women. You can always get another.
Wow. Talk about tough love. So expressing vulnerability, especially for men, it's a dangerous game in this culture.
It seems that way. But, and this is where it gets really interesting, that they do have a way to express those forbidden emotions.
I need to know more. How do they do that?
They have a kind of secret language of the soul. And it's found in their poetry, what they call ginawa.
Hold on. We have to unpack this ginawa, but I think it's the perfect place to stop for now and come back to it when we start back up. So before we had to stop, I was dying to know more about this ginawa. Like you said, it was their secret language of the soul.
I did, and it's a pretty accurate description. Remember how important sharaf is to the Awlad Ali?
Right, all about staying strong, not showing weakness.
Exactly. So openly expressing your emotions, not really an option. It goes against that whole code.
But they've got to have some kind of outlet.
They do. That's where ginawa comes in. It's this incredibly personal form of poetry. It's how they give voice to everything they can't say out loud.
So all those taboo emotions,
Yeah.
the ones that would cause a scandal if they talked about them openly.
All of them. Love, longing, sadness, troubles in their marriages. It's all fair game in ginawa.
I can see why you called it a release valve earlier. Like they bottle it up and let it all out in their poems.
And the things they talk about, like Abu-Lughod gives this example about a woman named Aziza. She's stuck in an unhappy marriage.
Okay, but she can't exactly leave her husband or talk about it with anyone.
Nope. That would be social suicide. The gossip. The damage to her family's reputation. Unimaginable. But then she reads this ginawa. What happened? She shares it with some other women, and here's the amazing part. They don't judge her at all. They actually get it. They understand her pain. They sympathize. It's like the poetry allows them to see past the social rules and connect on a human level.
So ginawa lets them have these feelings without the consequences. That's kind of revolutionary when you think about it.
Right. It's their way of rebelling against a system that demands silence. It's a testament to human resilience. Even in a culture as strict as the Awlad Alis, they need a way to be emotionally honest.
Makes you think, doesn't it?
Right.
Like maybe that need for connection, for authenticity, it's universal.
Absolutely. It goes way beyond the Awlad Ali.
I mean, think about it. Art, music, literature, aren't those all just our ways of expressing the things we can't say in our everyday lives?
Our own versions of ginawa. Ways of finding our voice when we're afraid to speak. It's a very human thing, wanting to be seen and understood for who we truly are. And the Awlad Ali, they remind us that even in the most unexpected places, we can find beauty and truth in the shadows.
Such a good point. We may not communicate through ginawa, but we all have our own ways of bridging the gap between what we feel and what society expects of us.
It's something to think about, right?
It really is. This whole look at ginawa has been fascinating, but I know we still have more to unpack about the Awlad Ali. What other insights can we get from Abu-Lughod's work? It's really amazing how much we can learn about another culture just by digging into a single book like this.
It is. And as we wrap up here, I think it's important to remember, the Awlad Ali's story, it's not just some isolated thing. It connects with all of us, even if we're a world away.
Exactly. We uncover these cultures that seem so different on the surface.
Right.
But underneath, it's all those same human experiences, hopes, struggles, everything.
Totally. And that's what makes deep dives like this so cool. Like, remember when we were talking about Aggle?
Yeah.
That whole social intelligence thing?
Yeah. Knowing when to speak up, when to stay quiet, that's not just an Awlad Ali thing, is it?
Nope. Every culture has those unspoken rules. We just have different ways of expressing them.
So it's like a universal language, Aggle, but with a different dialect depending on where you are in the world.
I like that. And just like they have ginawa to get those hidden emotions out there, we find our own ways to express the things we can't always say.
Our own forms of art and music and writing, even those deep conversations we have with people we trust, It's how we bridge that gap between who we are inside and how we're expected to act on the outside.
And that need, that desire to be authentic, I think that's something we all share, no matter who we are or where we come from.
And that's what makes the Awlad Ali story so powerful, I think. It reminds us that even when everything around you is changing, that human spirit, it always finds a way to make itself heard.
Beautiful way to put it. It's a testament to how adaptable we are, how resilient.
And maybe it's a good reminder for all of us, to think about the things we're keeping bottled up inside. Maybe it's time to find our own ginawa.
I love that. What stories are waiting inside of you? What language will you use to set them free? Until next time, keep asking those questions, keep searching, and keep diving deep into the incredible tapestry of human experience.